Hey guys, Argent here. So I've tried making this video 4 and 5 times. The video file always gets corrupted or doesn't record properly or something, so hopefully it'll work this time. So this is on why I think IS will win, why I think IS is different, and why I think they're so successful and such a threat. Now, before I started recording, when I did my previous versions of this, Russia had not joined the war. Whether that or not that will make an existential difference, I'm not really sure. But I'm just going to proceed with what I've covered, what I did previously, and add some kind of recent events to it. So why do I think IS is so different? Firstly, I think we have to establish that the people who run IS are not dumb. The people who run IS tend to be highly educated, extremely media savvy. From what I've looked at and what I did a previous video on is a lot of the recruits, or at least the middle and upper leadership of terrorist organizations in general, and IS in particular, are extremely well-educated urban professionals who wind up joining organizations like this. I think it's very easy to just dismiss IS as a bunch of, well, barbarians, a bunch of cavemen who are practicing kind of a medieval ideology and are basically just bloodthirsty barbarians who engage in horrific acts for their own sake. And there is an aspect of that to IS. There's a very strong aspect of that to IS. But overall, I think you have to look at it in the context of a strategy, a master plan, if you will, to bring about their global caliphate, or at least just to gain power and keep expanding. The people who run IS are not stupid. They are not lacking in ultimate plans. And I think, to go with Sun Tzu, Sun Tzu stated, if you know neither your enemy nor yourself, you will fail in 1,000 battles. If you know yourself but not your enemy, you will succeed about half the time. And if you know your enemy and know yourself, you will succeed in every battle. What scares me about IS is I believe that they know both themselves and they know their enemy. I think they know both extremely well, and that makes them dangerous. So let's start off with, why are they having such success? I mean, Al-Qaeda never had this kind of success. Sure, they do some terror bombings. Sure, they had a couple local affiliates around the world. But they never attempted to do what IS has. There was no Al-Qaeda state. There was no attempt to really establish a global caliphate. That was a long-term goal that they kind of gave lip service to. But Osama bin Laden didn't declare himself caliph. None of the Al-Qaeda guys ever really attempted to go with it. So why is ISIS doing this? Why is ISIS attempting to declare this global empire? Why are they attempting to go through with all of this? Well, I have 3 main points I'd like to cover. The first is that they're actually doing something. They're actually kind of living the dream, LARPing, if you will. They're actually doing it. Secondly, that they are incredibly media savvy. And thirdly, I think they correctly judge the capacities of their opponents. So let's just go through this. So firstly, since the fall of the Ottoman Empire and even further back, because there has been a dream of a pan-Islamic state, to some extent a pan-Arab state. These things are not mutually exclusive. Islam has always, if not been an ethnically Arab movement, a culturally Arab movement. So we have like these people in Sudan and Mali and Chad and just some random who refer to themselves as being Arab when they're obviously not Arabs. They might have like 5 or 10% Arab blood, but they're clearly black Africans. But they will call themselves Arab because Arab is kind of a culture that spreads with Islam. So we have a lot of Islamic countries that use Arabic script. Kenya does, I believe, to a certain extent. Pakistan does. Iran does, etc. So they use Arabic script despite having no ethnic connections with the Arabs, because that's what the Quran's written in. And to a large extent, Islamic imperialism is also cultural Arab imperialism. So there's been this dream, and there's been secular forms of it. Nasser, the Ba'ath movement, Since the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, and even before with the Arab Revolt, there's been this dream of forming a unified Arab state, from Morocco to Oman, uniting all the disparate Arab countries into one superstate and being able to be that great Muslim Arab superpower. And there's been socialist versions of it, etc., but they've all been more or less Islamic and more or less Arab in character. And this has kind of been a dream ever since the rise of the Ottomans, the defeat of the last couple Arab caliphates by the Mongols and their successors, the Turks. And we've had this rhetoric. We've had Nasser, we've had Saddam, we've had the couple short-lived, crappy, grand unified Arab republics. We've had Al-Qaeda talking about it. But ISIS is actually doing it. IS has established the Islamic State. They've elected a caliph. They've declared a global caliphate. And whatever local branch joins them, they declare them the official government of that province. When Boko Haram joined, they formed the province of Nigeria or West Africa or whatever it's called, and they declared Boko Haram the official government. When they took over a city in Libya, they declared I think the governorate of Cyrenaica in Libya, or whatever it's called, and they declared that city to be the local capital. They are at least making the pretense of being an empire, of being a state, of holding territory, of having population, of collecting taxes, of having a standing army. They are at least attempting to adopt the forms of being an actual state. So it's not just like you join some terrorist group and if you can go and you can join the Islamic State, you can be a citizen of the Islamic State, and you can be literally a soldier for Islam, a soldier for the Islamic State, and you can actually conquer territory and hold the territory, and fight an open war against your opponents. And this is something new. This is not something we've seen for a very long time. So we have Arabs and other Muslims just pouring in, because this is their chance. In their home countries, they may be Muslim, but there's no real political movement that has a chance of winning, of achieving pan-Islamic dreams. Now, there's a lot of reasons for this. A lot of times, this local government doesn't want to give up power. The monarchy in Morocco really doesn't want to give up power. Even in countries that are more ideologically similar to this, like Saudi Arabia, perhaps, the House of Saud doesn't really want to give up power. But IS they're minting their own coins. They have their own budget. They are a legitimate state in all but international recognition. They are an empire. People have, just like I said, they've been talking about this for decades. They've been doing this, but these guys, but they're doing it. Like, people always talk about, oh, we're going to restore the Roman Empire. Well, this is if let's say Italy invaded, I don't know, we're just going to make something up, southern France and eastern Spain. They elected a new Caesar, and they declared themselves the restored Roman Empire, and they changed everything to that. Not just like Mussolini using some imagery, but actually legally changed the name of their country to that, and declared their formal intention to restore the Roman Empire by conquest, and asked people who shared their dream to come to Italy and to fight in that war. That's something completely shocking. Like I said, this isn't just Germany or Italy or some other country invoking symbolism of the past. This is a true attempt to bring it back. And to generations of people throughout the Middle East who have known nothing but kind of corrupt, petty local governments, this is their chance. This is the best chance that they will get in the foreseeable future for an Islamic State, for a new caliphate, for a new global Islamic empire. And I think the people realize this. And they say, well, we've been asking this for centuries, so let's go fight. Let's go give it our all, because this is really all we can do. So it's captured the imagination. Young men want a cause to fight for. They want to show aggression. They want to build something. This is like, I just have to keep repeating it because of how remarkable it is. That there is actually a sizable amount of land that is controlled by a government that claims to be a resurrected empire. So this is something unprecedented and completely new. Now we add to this ISIS's mastery of the media. Now, people will say, well, but most of the press they have is bad. Most of the press alienates people. Most of the press basically calls them barbarians. Okay, but I think it was P.T. Barnum who stated, so long as they spell your name right, there's no such thing as bad publicity. And that's true. I mean, in contrast to Al-Qaeda, who did, they did 9/11 and then they kind of, faded away. We got ISIS in the news every day. I think that's a large degree why they do the shit they do. Why they do such horrific massacres. Why they put the guy in the cage and lit it on fire. Why they sell slaves. Why they carried out the Paris attacks. Why they carried out just all this stuff. Why do they keep blowing stuff up? Why do they keep expanding the war? Because they realistically can't support Al-Shabaab or I think Al-Shabaab's still part of Al-Qaeda, but they can't reasonably support Boko Haram. They're the other side of the world. But it doesn't matter because it gets them in the news. They can talk about, well, we have a province now in Nigeria. Boko Haram can just keep shooting people. We can blow up a school in Kenya. We can blow up stuff in Paris. We can keep the terrorist attacks up. We can keep blowing, the blowing up the historical buildings thing was genius propaganda. Because as bad as it was and as much disgust as it rose, it kept them in the news cycle. It showed the people who might be sympathetic towards them, look guys, we're relevant. We're not fading away. We're not going to be this movement that just becomes mainstream and makes no real attempt in the long term to keep going. ISIS has shown that they are committed to maintaining the initiative. They're committed to keep doing things because it's very easy to lose the initiative, to kind of get bogged down. But ISIS, I think, correctly realizes what they need to do. What they have is a huge population of young Muslim males, both in the West and in the Islamic world, who are sympathetic to them or might join them. And what they have to do is just keep pushing. They have to keep inspiring and capturing the imagination of these people. They have to keep just going. They have to keep conquering territory, etc. The worst thing that could happen to ISIS is not that they alienate one more country, and we'll get to this and why it doesn't matter and when I get to my third main point, but that they keep in the news, that they just show to people, we're IS, we're the Islamic State, we mean serious business. We're not like Al-Qaeda, we're not like these other jokers who might do something once a decade or something. We're doing this shit all the time. And they're just kind of become this omnipresent thing. They're becoming part of the popular culture. They're becoming a byword. People know who IS is. People might not know who the hell Boko Haram is or Al-Shabaab or some Randis in Pakistan, but they know who IS is. It's a brand. It's a brand that inspires fear and terror in their opponents. And that's part of it. And this is where we're going to get into kind of my third major point, that I think they understand themselves and they understand their opponents. Warfare, I think, to a large extent, is a matter of will. In World War I, we had Serbia hold out for the majority of the war against Germany, Austro-Hungary, and Bulgaria, which had dozens of times the population of them, that had far larger armies, because the Serbian people were absolutely and totally committed to the preservation of Serbia. And they were able to repeatedly inflict horrific defeats on the Austro-Hungarians. Now, they lost in the end, although they were eventually liberated by their allies. But they held out extremely long. No one expected the Serbians to do nearly as well as they did. But they just didn't give up. Every Serb male was willing to die on behalf of his country. They were unwilling to surrender. They were willing to do whatever it took to win. They were able to fight incredibly savagely and incredibly toughly. I'm not criticizing them for that. I'm just saying. Or we have the Finns. The Finns who were able to hold off the Soviet Union. Granted, they eventually lost the war because they had to, but the Soviet Union had to settle for rather modest territorial concessions instead of a full-on annexation of Finland or the imposition of a communist government. just because of their extreme resistance, their complete unwillingness to give up. And no one is more extreme in their will than IS. The fact that they have thousands of people who are willing to walk into like marketplaces, blow themselves up, and kill hundreds of civilians is a display of strength that is almost unrivaled in human history. I'm not saying it's not evil, I'm just saying the amount of devotion you have to inspire to get people, well-educated people, mind you, to put on a suicide vest, go in, and kill dozens or hundreds of innocent civilians takes a supreme will. That is a person who's not afraid of death. That's a person who's not afraid to break every social and moral rule in pursuit of a cause, in pursuit of a goal. How do you match that? How do you defeat that? How do you deal with it if every IS soldier, at least a massive number of them, are willing to die, are willing to take hostages, are willing to commit genocide, are willing to do literally whatever it takes to win? I don't know, you have to utterly destroy them. But that's rather difficult. Even if they do have a formal state you can invade, fighting them to a certain extent makes them stronger, because it gives them more sympathy and more media attention. And it just kind of galvanizes their will. We're facing an enemy that has a basically unshatterable will, in which the vast majority of their members are willing to die. And not just die, but die in truly horrific ways on behalf of their cause. How can we in the West, who let Omar Khadr out of jail when we should have hung him as a traitor, how do we in the West, who tolerated our children getting raped at Rotherham and didn't execute, or I don't think gave life sentences to any of the people who ran a child sex ring, how are we supposed to compete with a people who can put on a suicide vest, walk into a crowded marketplace, and blow themselves up because they're so certain of the cause? We can't, and it's I don't think we can understand this because we don't have this kind of will. And that is why I think they understand us, because it doesn't really matter that there's a global coalition against ISIS. It doesn't really matter that pretty much everybody is against them. Because what IS believes, and I think correctly, is that, well, eventually all these people will lose. Because many of these countries like Jordan, like Egypt, like Saudi Arabia, like Yemen, like Oman, a lot of these countries have very unstable governments. Their governments rule through fear and repression, but they are unstable. They, to a certain extent, lack legitimacy, and they don't have the power and social capital for a long war. It's not like revolutionary France, or actually IS is more like revolutionary France, or World War II America, where the entire nation is united in the towards the war. They're united in their effort to basically to fight and win no matter the cost. These countries, if they impose any kind of the deprivations that war would cause, and they have to deal with just repeated daily suicide bombings, to deal with IS coming in, starting to recruit people, starting to agitate against them, they aren't going to be able to last. They might do what the Shah did and try to put down the revolts, but eventually they'll probably lose. And IS is hoping that if they can draw in Jordan, if they can draw in Saudi Arabia, if they can draw in all these unstable states into a war of attrition, that they will collapse like dominoes one by one. Because IS knows they can hold out no matter what. There's really not a lot you can do to them other than just going in and slaughtering every single member of them. But they believe, and I think correctly, that we can't do that. We don't have the political will to win wars anymore. We don't have the political will to go in and massacre every one of our enemies, to burn them to ashes, to destroy their ideology, to pull down everything they've built. We don't have that. We get nervous if we even bomb or shoot people who slaughter women and children. So IS is saying, well, we have all these kind of governments that surround us who are unstable. We just have to outlast them because we won't break no matter what. But they're made of much softer materials than us. They're made of much more brittle materials. They will break. The Hashemites in Jordan will fall. We just have to keep going. Even if it takes a generation, these countries will continue to become more and more unstable. We will continue to get more and more influence among the people. And this is kind of where the first two steps go. So every year we keep the Islamic Caliphate going, we become more deeply rooted in the public conscience. We become deeply rooted at a more constant state through constant attacks of terror. We capture the public's imagination more and more. So really, IS, the more time that passes, the better things get for them. They gain more and more support, they gain more and more media presence. The idea of them being the legitimate caliphate by being able to hold off all these people, and to a large extent it helps their prestige the more countries declare war on them. Because realistically, none of these countries will really do anything substantive to stop them. Oh, we'll launch air attacks, but they'll be the kind of half-assed air attacks we have now. And they can deal with that. Casualties don't really matter to them. So what they think will happen is what happened in Iraq and Afghanistan, where they'll launch air attacks for a couple of years. They won't send in ground troops. They won't really make a real effort to dismantle IS, and eventually the local populations will, in the West, are so weak and so cowardly, they'll just be like, oh, we can't keep killing these people. We have to pull out. I don't have to sacrifice personally, but I'm tired of reading about it in the newspaper. And they'll say that, and then they'll give up and go home. To quote Mark Stein, the jihad has held out very long against some tough opponents. If you're not afraid of fighting the Russians or the Israelis, why would you be afraid of fighting the Canadians, the British, the Germans, the Spanish, or the Swedish? None of these countries have the will to fight. Russia has a much stronger warrior ethos. They don't give a shit. They'll blow civilian targets up all day long. But they're not afraid of those guys. They're not afraid of the Israelis, who are tough as balls. So they're not afraid of like countries who would actually fight them. Why would they fear any of these countries that are so weak they can't even deal with riots? I mean, look at America. We have riots all the time now. We have the knockout game. We have the Black Lives Matter guys. We have a increasingly kind of anarchic society that can't even secure its borders. Why would you be afraid of fighting these people? Why would you be afraid of leadership who says we're going to apologize to the terrorists? We have to do more to increase opportunities. We're so bad. IS is our fault. I mean, these guys are pansies. I wouldn't be afraid of them. Why would IS be afraid of them? I mean, like I said, they're not afraid of the people who will actually shoot them, who will actually just go in and blow the living crap out of them and not give a shit about my feelings or my human rights, like the Russians and Israelis. So why would they be afraid of any of these guys? So we get Japan joining in, we get all of Europe joining in this coalition, but the coalition is pointless. There's no desire to win the war. There's no desire to resolve the situation. So all IS has to do is survive a decade, and we'll start to see these countries surrounding it collapse. We'll see the West's pathetic efforts to contain them fizzle out under a wave of just self-doubt, just liberal, oh, we can't do anything to hurt these people, just stuff like that. That's just kind of how the world is at the moment. I don't know really what can be done about it, but that's just how powerful these people are. This is just how much they've kind of started to affect the common global perception. So this will just keep going. Unless ISIS is decisively defeated, which I don't really know how we're going to do that at this point, even if there was the will to do it. I mean, it would be a lot better if there was the will to do it, and we actually made them fear us, made the Muslim world feel something other than just disgust and contempt for us. Because ultimately, your enemy must fear you. If your enemy doesn't fear you, then they won't be cautious. Why would ISIS not be? Why would ISIS be cautious? They could literally do what they did in Paris, and they won't stop the refugees. They could slaughter entire towns of French people. They can slaughter entire towns of Germans, which is probably going to happen. And these countries are so weak, so cowardly, so unconcerned with their own citizens, they'll just let it happen. And they'll do it with a smile on their face and they'll apologize for it. So IS knows that their will won't break. And they know that most of their opponents will break, will undergo internal political struggles, or will undergo economic collapse. Maybe they have some other plans to speed this up. Maybe they want to affect global oil production. Maybe they want to cut off some important trade routes. Maybe they want to just create an environment of fear that disrupts the global economy. Who knows? But as can be shown when we had the Madrid trade bombing and Spain pulled out of the war, it takes a very small number of deaths in comparison to what historically happened for countries to basically give up at this point and beg for mercy. And that, my friends, is why I believe IS will win. That is what I believe their ultimate strategy is, their ultimate war aims, their ultimate goals are. That is why they are so dangerous. And that is why they are fundamentally different from previous opponents. Because they are actually creating a caliphate. They are modern, smart people with good media savvy who understand how to manipulate public opinion. And the enemies that they face, they have a keen understanding of their weaknesses. And they understand their own strengths. So that's my thoughts on the matter. This is Argent Templar signing out.